All right, everyone. A group of employees within Facebook, some dozens or hundreds, I guess, have gotten together to encourage political diversity within the company. They're like, hey, we've got like diversity in every other way. We think that's important. Why not ideological diversity? Wouldn't you think you'd want some employees? An employee is not a liberal or a user is not a liberal, so they shouldn't be punished for that. Apparently, this has triggered a lot of other Facebook employees. They're like, "No, we can't allow that. Oh my God!" And it's like immigrants will be upset, and people who are like snowflakes will be melt and everything. Yeah, that's really they try to hold Silicon Valley over a barrel. The fact is, Silicon Valley, being an urbanite setting, you're gonna get more left-wing people, and that's ultimately fine. But let's not kid ourselves. Zuckerberg is also a liberal. Jack is also a liberal. Google has run its highest level teams. They're liberals. These people have a certain political axe to grind. It is necessarily true that they will use their platforms, which collectively, just those three platforms, within regards to social media, it's the vast majority of all human communication on the planet. It is necessarily true that they will misuse that. That's the way corporations operate. That is why we need to extend First and Fourth Amendment protections to these platforms. They are too intrinsic, if only for economic reasons. That human communication, the creativity that happens on these big tech firms, is so economically important to the entire world's technological development, you'd think that all governments would want a seat at the table saying, hey, we want that creativity to continue. It's really, really lucrative. Billions of dollars to be made. These tech firms should not be kicking people off for topical political debate, for being mildly offensive, for using the wrong word, for pissing somebody else who is really weak-wristed and a snowflake off. Who cares if some fragile, stupid person gets offended at some joke you made? In some cases, people are getting kicked off these platforms for having posted something half a decade ago. That, I believe, is counterproductive in just the economic sense, let alone in the sense of these being U.S. firms. They should exist under the concept, not the legal framework, but the concept of free expression. It is extremely important to note free speech, free expression, free press go beyond the Constitution itself. They're delineated in the sense of government within the Constitution. By the way, Silicon Valley partners with government. You create what I would say is an illegal constitutional workaround when government co-ops these sites and tries to get them to censor people, especially their political opponents or their corporate media opponents, corporate media being tied at the hip with DC. That's what I would say. It's about the spirit. It's about the concept that people should be able to express themselves. If it's not a credible threat or defamatory or something like that, it should be allowed to be expressed. Since these sites constitute the modern public square, protections need to be extended to those using these platforms. It's simply the right and ethical thing to do. It is the historically, you would say this is what the founders would say you should do. Those protections should be extended. Now, we've already got Trump trying to get them to extend those protections without passing some sort of law. Let us hope that they bow before that wish and stop censoring people for political opinions. Let's hope that they stop abusing employees for having, again, topical differences of opinion with regards to a border wall or immigration quotas or something like that. Because otherwise, the only option left is legal. Now, and that could cause the government to declare them utilities, which I no longer support. I think we simply need an Internet Bill of Rights. We need a bill that extends First and Fourth Amendment protections explicitly to firms, especially where they are trusts, where they are essentially monopolies. We saw what happened in InfoWars. A half a dozen sites decide to deplatform them, and as far as the normie internet goes, if it weren't for all the news reports about them, they would stop existing. The only reason they're still relevant now, and in fact arguably more powerful than before, is because they've got millions of other people now openly discussing the issue. And it was sparked largely by InfoWars, because they're one of the biggest groups to be, martyred, mass deplatformed. But it is obvious that Facebook has an inherent political bias. There's a reason I no longer really use their site. With these other sites, I think mostly it boils down to money and a power grab by the corporate media and NGOs. I still believe that. And by certain political groups. I don't think it's Silicon Valley in a vacuum decided to start abusing all of its own user base. I don't actually think that that's what happened. I think that they were given basically a carrot and stick treatment by these other groups who said, hey, We can write defamatory pieces about your company and stir up trouble. We'll get the government involved. They'll declare you utilities or something. I'm sure that that threat has been made. Or you can just censor who we tell you to censor and algorithmically manipulate things, give us a boost because we're tired of being outcompeted by some fucking dude with a webcam, and then all will be forgiven. We'll make sure to side with you. We'll give you favorable coverage and make you look really good with the normies and with the government so they will never come calling after you, despite the fact that you are monopolistic. You are a trust. You don't even compete with one another. You literally work together. You collude with one another to censor users. That's what happened in InfoWars. Do you honestly think it was coincidental, all the platforms that got banned on at the same fucking time? Total coincidence. Absolutely. It is coincidental when Facebook, Apple, and Google all deplatform you in the same 24-hour period. They didn't coordinate with one another, nor did they take tips from one another. And you know, YouTube even came out and said, well, it had nothing to do with TOS violation of anything except they were basically ban evading, which is not actually true. They had a second account. You never told it. By as far as I know, there's no rule against that, by the way. A lot of people have more than one account. What rule specifically was broken? You didn't notify them that they're not allowed to stream on their second channel. You banned them for it anyway. It was a little bit of a cop-out there. But yeah, it's like, oh, Facebook has an employee culture that is intolerant? I never would have guessed. You know, it's sort of like James Damore. That's who this is being compared to. He came out with his memo at Google and said, hey, you know, our company needs more diversity of opinion because right now we are stymieing a lot of creative people and making them feel unwelcome by saying basically, you're a bigot, you're literally not welcome here. You're a horrible person because you're not a liberal. Well, yeah, of course, other Silicon Valley firms like Apple. Apple, I'm sure, has the same thing. Microsoft has the same thing. Amazon has the same thing. All of these companies fundamentally are going to exhibit that same pattern. That's because neoliberalism is very good for corporations. They don't want a fiscal conservative to come in and try to restore like actual capitalism. Shit, they'd actually be competed with. That'd be terrible for them. It's like, why do you think like, well, all of these companies are run by people who fall under one or of two umbrellas. They're either neoliberals or neoconservatives, which ultimately at the end of the day, they're not that different. A mainline Republican, a mainline Democrat, their opinions 90% of the time for economic issues are the same. The Republican says, I'm going to lower your taxes 0.5%. Wow, I'm such a fiscal conservative. No, fiscal conservatives, I'm going to slash them by 50%. Which Republican is saying that they're going to do that? Democrats, I'm going to raise your taxes by 0.5%. Oh, I'm such a progressive. No, an actual bleeding heart Marxist is going to say, oh, I want to tax the rich at like 90% or something. Yeah, there's no diversity of opinion. People are worried about conservatives and in the generic sense being censored. Well, yeah, people who are actually conservative, mainline so-called conservatives, not even on the right. They're leftists, actually, and basically just liberals. I don't see a big difference between the two. So I'm not surprised. What is surprising is that a bunch of employees would stand up to this intolerant culture. Yeah, the far left is definitely intolerant of other opinions because they know if a person who is a neoliberal has to debate anyone else, they lose. They know that because the establishment can't stand on its own merits. It doesn't have any merits. That's about all. Peace out.